Hey church, welcome to week 3 of our series Family Matters. Today we'll be exploring birth order. We're so glad you're here. Last Sunday was Promotion Sunday and all students moved up to their new grade level. That means all our incoming 6th graders will be joining the youth, and those new kindergartners moved into our K through 3 classes. Speaking of those kids, be sure to sign them up for this year's Kids Camp June 23rd through the 26th. This year's theme is Live It Out. Head to the Kids Camp tab on our website to register. There you can also sign up to volunteer, so come help us make this the best week of everyone's summer. And our youth will be having a summer camp August 4th through the 6th. We'll be heading up to Shaver, staying in a cabin, and having some lake time. It's going to be incredible. Head to the app or website for more details. We use our Prodigal Church app to communicate so many things to everyone, so make sure you have it. You can even use the app if you'd like to give. Thanks so much for your generosity to Prodigal. That's it for announcements today. We're so glad you're here for week 3 of Family Matters. Happy Sunday.
It's the bigger love of the family.
Well, hey, it's so good to be with you. If something's feeling a little out of place, it's me. If we don't know each other, my name is Eric and I'm the worship pastor here at Prodigal. Now, a lot of times at churches, they'll call on a music person to come teach about one thing and one thing only. Well, I'm proud to let you know I will not be giving a message about church worship and why you should be singing more. Today, we're in week 3 of Family Matters and I'm going to share a bit about birth order. My goal for today is simple. It's to encourage you to be you and help us all remember that we carry immeasurable value and worth. Now, do we have any firstborns watching? Yes, our intellectually advanced, are responsible, reliable, rule-following, natural leaders who may experience a tiny bit of perfectionism and anxiety. Now, did any of you end up being only children? If you did, you might have matured faster, had some perfectionism, but you're self-motivated and perhaps had a better relationship with your parents. Maybe experiencing some loneliness growing up. What about our second, thirdborns, any number after 1? Did you all grow up having to be flexible, adaptable, maybe more socially aware? Maybe you were peer-oriented since your parents were spread so thin? Did you identify more by what you weren't, like unlike my preppy brother? But did you also struggle a bit with personal identity? How about our family babies, the lastborns? These are our free-spirited, fun-loving, attention-seeking creatives. Did you guys struggle with responsibility since everyone does everything for you and no one ever told you no? These, of course, are all generalizations or stereotypes. But how do they make you feel? Do you identify with it? Is it not even close? Well, growing up, I was... Oh shoot, hold on. Sorry, I forgot something. Any middle kids present? Yeah, those peacemaking, adaptable independents who may have felt overlooked or forgotten growing up. See, I grew up sandwiched between an older brother and a younger sister, not sure how much peacemaking I did, but independent to a fault. Asking for help is hard. As a parent now, we have done a number on our kids, and their birth order is so confused. We built our family through adoption, and nothing makes sense. Our oldest was 3rd of 7, turned 1st of 5. Our next guy was 5th of 7, and separated from his twin, turned 2nd. Our next was the baby of 4, turned middle child. Our 4th is probably the most normal, going from baby to big sister. And our youngest is our first and only biological, and on most days, not happy about being the family baby. So as we explore birth order today, we'll look at its effect on intelligence, personality, and biblical importance. But first, let's take a look at some modern scientific studies on the effects of birth order. In 2007, there was a study out of Norway that examined the effects of birth order on IQ. They gave over 250,000 people a military conscription IQ test. They found that on average, firstborns have about a 3-point IQ advantage over siblings when it comes to IQ. Wow! So what's that mean? Well, all IQ tests have a 5 to 10 point margin of error, meaning an average of 3 points is unnoticeable. Sorry to burst your bubble, firstborns. They concluded that family dynamics may affect intelligence, but not necessarily birth order. Okay, but what about personality? In 2015, researchers in Germany conducted a study and surveyed over 20,000 people focusing on the big 5 personality measures. They found no meaningful birth order effects on personality traits like extroversion, emotional stability, agreeableness. They too found that firstborns have a slight intellectual edge of an average of 2 IQ points over their siblings. They concluded that birth order has a very limited effect on personality and that personalities highly contrast birth order stereotypes. That'll be important. Also in 2015, a study here in the US analyzed personality traits of 377,000 high school students. And again, firstborns scored higher in intellect, but the effects of birth order were so small that it's unlikely to have any impact on real-world outcome. One final study, in 1999, researchers explored self-perceptions versus actual traits in siblings. And they found that people believe their personalities fit their birth order stereotypes. But when tested, objective measures did not support these beliefs. In fact, stereotypes may shape how someone sees themselves more than their actual behavior. This is because of something called confirmation bias. A confirmation bias is when we seek out, interpret, and remember information that confirms pre-existing beliefs while ignoring or discounting any evidence that contradicts them. It's the "you're the oldest, be a leader and set an example for your brother, guilty, said it this week." It's being late to pick up your middle kid from soccer one time, and he feels like you always remember everything for everyone else except him. These stereotypes are so prevalent, and the line between stereotype and expectation is oftentimes too thin for our internal expectations of ourselves, as well as the external expectations that are placed on us by others. But if birth order has no actual effect on intelligence or personality, let's see what the Bible has to say about it. I think it's safe to say that none of us have experienced what we're about to look at. We're headed to Genesis to look at the family of Father Abraham, who had many sons. We'll start with some context. In the ancient Near East, an area that included ancient Israel, Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Canaan, the firstborn had a place of legal, religious, social, and economic significance. Firstborns were given a double portion, but were also expected to succeed their fathers when they passed. And this included inheriting the land, authority, and responsibility for the whole family. We actually have some ancient law codes that show this, both from the Hammurabi from the Babylonians in Mesopotamia and the Nuzi tablets from the Hurrian society. They both show how these cultures prioritized and protected the inheritance rights of the firstborn, and namely the rights of the firstborn son of his father's choosing. It was very common for people to have slaves or maidservants or handmaids. The firstborn son who had the protected rights was the firstborn son of the man's wife, not the firstborns of slaves or servants, regardless of the order. Understanding that, let's check out to see what the Hebrew law had to say about it. In Exodus 13:2, the Lord said to Moses, "Consecrate to me all the firstborn, whatever is the first to open the womb among the Israelites, of human beings and animals is mine." And this is echoed in Numbers 3:13, which says, "For all the firstborn are mine. When I killed all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, I consecrated for my own all the firstborn in Israel, both human and animal, they shall be mine. I am the Lord." The law that affects the stories we're looking at today comes from Deuteronomy 21, and it says this: "If a man has 2 wives, one of them loved and the other disliked, and if both the loved and the disliked have borne him sons, the firstborn, being the son of the one who is disliked, then on the day when he wills his possessions to his sons, he is not permitted to treat the son of the loved as the firstborn, in preference to the son of the disliked, who is the firstborn. He must acknowledge the firstborn, giving him a double portion of all that he has, since he is the first issue of his virility. The right of the firstborn is his." Some translations will say, "The firstborn is the beginning of his strength or power." And this is in stark contrast to the cultures around them. So let's get to the story of Father Abraham in Genesis 16. God promises Abraham that his offspring will be more than the stars or sand on the shores. But his wife Sarah remained childless. She then decides to give Abraham her maidservant Hagar to just get the ball rolling. Hagar becomes pregnant, and there's conflict between her and Sarah, and Hagar ends up fleeing with her son Ishmael. Later on, Sarah does become pregnant and gives birth to Isaac. So Abraham's second-born becomes the bearer of the promise and is treated as the firstborn. Let's keep it going. Isaac then marries Rebekah, and she becomes pregnant with twins. The Lord tells her that she has two nations in her womb. The younger will serve the older. On their birthday, Esau the hunter comes out first, and Jacob the trickster comes out second, clinging to his heel. Later in life, in an act of preventing his own starvation, Esau sells his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of stew. Later, before Isaac dies, Rebekah devises a plan for Jacob to steal Isaac's blessing as well. So they trick Isaac into thinking Jacob is Esau, and Jacob gains both firstborn status and is blessed by his father. But when Isaac finds out that he's been tricked, he basically says, well, what's done is done. And so far, nothing has gone to plan culturally or legally. But let's keep going. Jacob the trickster gets tricked himself, believing that he has worked for a man named Laban to marry his daughter Rachel. But on the wedding day, Laban swaps in his oldest daughter Leah, because it's their custom that the oldest would marry first. So he married Leah. Jacob would then go on to work even longer for Laban to ultimately end up marrying the younger sister Rachel. This gets wild, so stick with me. Leah, who's Jacob's first wife, gives birth to 4 sons. Being childless and jealous, Rachel gives Jacob her maidservant Bilhah, and she has 2 sons with Jacob. Then Leah becomes jealous, and she gives her maidservant Zilpah, and she has 2 sons with Jacob. Then Leah gives birth to 2 more sons and 1 daughter. So that's 7 for Leah, 2 for each maidservant, 0 for Rachel. After all that, Rachel finally becomes pregnant and gives birth to Joseph, and then ultimately dies while delivering the next brother, Benjamin. But who ends up being favored by Jacob? It's Joseph, the firstborn of the wife he loved most. Do you remember that law we just read? We're going to skip ahead in the story quite a bit here. And as Jacob is nearing his end, he holds what looks like a blessing ceremony for the family, and he basically reads his will to them. But first things first, Jacob disowns his true firstborn for not living up to expectations and for doing a particularly heinous act. He then takes Joseph's 2 sons, adopts them, and places them in Reuben, his firstborn's place, which basically elevates Joseph to the place of firstborn because he'd be receiving a double portion since both his sons were receiving land from Grandpa. And in one final act of trickery and deception, Jacob then goes to bless his grandsons, the oldest on his right, the younger on the left, but at the last minute, crosses his arms, gives the younger brother the blessing over the older. Joseph, of course, protests, but Jacob's like, trust me, you'll see. I don't even know what to say about this, other than I'm getting the feeling that the firstborn status and privilege can be traded like candy, given and taken however the patriarch sees fit. But let's see if things get any better as we move on in the Hebrew Bible. Let's look at birth order and how it plays out in King David's family. When Saul is rejected by God as king in 1 Samuel, God sends Samuel to Bethlehem to the house of Jesse to anoint the future king of Israel. So Jesse presents 7 of his sons to Samuel, and Samuel asks, are all your sons here? Jesse tells him, no, my youngest is out in the field tending the sheep. Samuel basically says, stop everything and anoint him. He's the one. So the 8th born of Jesse is now the anointed future king of Israel, all while out doing his chores. Now we're going to skip ahead basically to the end of the story. And after a very long and complicated reign, David is on his deathbed and preparing to anoint the future king. David's firstborn Amnon was killed by his thirdborn Absalom. His thirdborn dies in battle, so his fourthborn Adonijah believes he's the heir to the throne and makes a power play for it. But at the end of the day, it's Solomon, David's 10th born son, and the 4th born family baby of David and Bathsheba, who becomes king. Yet another switcheroo when it comes to birth order and expectations. It seems like the Hebrew Bible suffers from a confirmation bias. It is believed that the place of the firstborn is special and even consecrated unto God, but the evidence would suggest otherwise. So if birth order does not have any effect on intelligence, personality, or even special status when it comes to the Hebrew Bible, what do we do? Well, let's look to Jesus. The author of Colossians, in chapter 1, verses 15 through 18, describes Jesus in this way. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For in him all things in heaven and on earth were created, things visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or powers, all things have been created through him and for him. He himself is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Okay, cool. So he's the ultimate firstborn. But wait, do you remember what happened to this firstborn? His life is sacrificed so that we may live. Birth order subverted once again. Jesus did leave us with one teaching with heavy birth order themes, and it comes from arguably his most famous parable, the one we get our name from, and likely a sermon on the third Sunday in September, the prodigal son. In this story, Jesus describes a father who has two sons, the younger who is rebellious, irresponsible at best, selfish and arrogant, like he's never been told no, and the older who is faithful, dedicated, hardworking, and rule-following. In this story, the father breaks down the walls of expectations on himself in the way he loves his sons, who both miss the mark of what is expected of them and what they expect of themselves. Expectations. It's said that unreasonable, unknown, and unspoken expectations are resentments waiting to happen. And when it comes to birth order in the stories we looked at, nothing seemed healthy or happy. So what do? Listen, it's okay to identify with the stereotypes associated with your birth order, and it's okay if you don't. But if that identification comes with expectations that don't line up with your actual observable behavior, they'll only turn into resentment of self or others. Life is heavy. It's heavy enough without the crushing weight of unrealistic or unmet or unknown or unrealized expectations, both internal that we impose on ourselves and external. The invitation from Jesus when life is heavy is always the same. He says this, to come to me, all you who are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light.